3, 2, 1.
Very in Los Angeles right now as an art major, as an artist.
One of the things that I'm interested in is the importance of criticism as well.
Okay.
Receiving criticism and how you receive it, and
right.
The importance of criticism.
My boyfriend's an architect.
Yeah.
And our relationship has been, he'll come into my studio, and he has a good eye. That's what he's trained is, looking at things, and his criticism will be very direct, because in his field, that's, people collaborate and get together, and it's more a part of his practice. That sort of
clients will tweak stuff.
Right. I mean, he has to adapt the work to what the client wants, and try to hold his his point of view too. But so he'll come to the studio and he'll critique something, and it will just devastate me, right? And my first reaction to any sort of critique is either I fight back, which if when I was in school, that would be it felt good to do that, to challenge your professor, but so my first reaction is to push back against it. It takes a while for any sort of criticism to actually seep in through, oh, maybe what they're saying is this, or maybe I'll look at that. But because he comes from a point of view, like his favorite artists are Donald Judd, typical architect's artist, minimal, Agnes Martin, it's like, I can't leave it at that. Yeah. I always add to it, and then I subtract back maybe. But I like that idea of keeping something minimal, but I can't do it. I've got to try it out into the work, and
I always think that with criticism, one of the important things is to realize it's going to piss you off, and to accept.
Okay, well, good.
Because when I write, Loretta often will read my stuff.
Right.
When I normally don't show it to anyone until it's kind of at least in finished draft stage, and she'll just rip it apart mercilessly, and it pisses me off so much.
Right.
It's so useful.
Right. So yeah, maybe that's for me too. I go through that initial, I get angry, and then and my boyfriend says, maybe I'm never gonna. But I want him to do. I want that sort of feedback and criticism, because sometimes you do need that extra push to view it outside of like the filter of like maybe I'm too close to the work and can't see it. I mean, but now there's, for visual artists, you can take photos, and then that gives you kind of a little download onto your computer and look at it that way. It gives you a distance from the work in a certain way that you can kind of see it.
Almost removed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and I do have some artist friends that I respect their point of view, but even with my friends, I will first put up a fight.
Yeah.
As soon as they say something about the some sort of critique, my first reaction is to put up the fight, and and then I have to ask myself too, like this idea. It's like, what is it that I want to say? Like, this is what this is what someone else said about the work. This is what the criticism about it. But when it comes down to it, what do I really want to say? And am I being able to? Am I saying it? And I change my work often after I photograph it. So sometimes it takes me a while to distance myself from the work to really see what's happening.
That's really interesting.
I'll have it professionally photographed, and sometimes, for a gallery, we'll get, if they're paying for it, then I'm like, oh fuck, I changed. There's there's that feeling of like, oh, someone else paid for this to be photographed, but I want to change the piece. I feel like I need to change the piece, and there's that dilemma.
Yeah.
And then I go for it. I always have to do it. I have to change it. And sometimes right. And that process could go on maybe for a while, you know. And but you know, for me, you know, if a work's sitting around, it doesn't mean it's, you know, what I think might be a finished piece might, you know, a year later, I might look at it differently and change it. So
yeah, Max Pesniel said that in his studio, that if something's still in the studio, it's fair game.
Yeah.
That, you know.
Yeah, it's like this idea: if you're going to hang out at the barbershop every day, you're going to get a haircut eventually. I mean, so the painting is hanging out in the barbershop every day, and it's going to get a haircut.
Yeah.
Sometime. You know.
Yeah. Do you ever rework when it comes back into you?
Yes, I've done that. Yeah, even after, if it didn't sell, or you know, was in a show, or you know, sometimes the piece just it's enough. I mean, that's a question that most artists could, you know, when is a piece finished? That's, you know, especially for painters, I think.
Yeah. For
painters, you know, it's, how do you know when it's done? And sometimes you walk away from it, and sometimes you know, sometimes you never know.
Do you think the practice of painting appeals then to certain types of thinkers?
I usually, when I talk about art, I think of it as, I talk about it as a painter, and I assume that all art is painting. You know, but you know, and I have friends that aren't painters.
Yeah,
and,
no, I do.
You know, but I you know, I'm thinking about painting, and I can, you know, I think painters in the studio, like, there's a certain type of personality, yes, like kind of a, you know, I might seem like a social person, but I feel socially awkward, and I feel like I'm more of a loner and more turned inward. And I think a lot of painters are that way. They'd rather spend hours in the studio by themselves.
Well, for painters, it's often a long and thoughtful process. So being in a space like this, which is a fairly large space,
right,
on your own, yeah, listening to music.
Right, or just staring at a painting for hours. Staring, you know. And, you know, part of that process of making something is just looking. And that can be it's intense. It can be an intense, draining, you know, process. So I think, yeah, certain personalities are. I can, you know, when I read about painters, you know, like reading the Joan Mitchell biography, that I see myself in that, you know, or reading about Philip Guston and the memoir written by his daughter, Night Studio, which is great. Most painters have read that book. I can relate to that person painting. I understand what's happening. And so, yeah, so even when I go to the museum, I feel like I'm with the people in their studio. I mean, with a good painting, that's what I feel like I'm experiencing, that sort of connection.
Now, talking of photographing things, I've seen this on your website.
Right. So actually, I think you saw it on my Tumblr website.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is just, you know, I like, you know, just a way to put up images, right? And this is in progress, you know, and I don't know where it's, you know, I feel like at this point I need to do 2 more large paintings.
Yeah.
Because I have a couple ideas that I'm working on right now that I don't want to lose the text down here.
Yes.
But I want to try another painting with doing the text all the way up the painting. So.
But you don't want to do it to this.
Right, because the way I started out this painting, the kind of rainbow color of the background, it's all tinted gesso, and I'm now painting oil paint on top of it.
Oh, right, yeah.
So I wanted to keep that flatness of the gesso, and so if I go up and do words in oil, I can't go back. You know? At a certain point, you know, with painting, there comes a moment where you can go forward, but you're going to lose everything if it's the wrong road.
And there's no
button. Right. It would become something else that might be interesting. But so And right now I'm playing with this idea of, you know, the pieces hanging on the front of it, and these are just tacked up here. I don't know how that's going to end up.
So the piece of wood you got up at the top there, that's
just you know, this it's just stapled up there. But I do want to have kind of this veil over it, and you know, this is kind of like when I was talking about optimism.
Yeah.
This painting is kind of has optimism and then nostalgia.
Yeah.
You know? So this is a moment for me of the 80s where this is just my thinking behind the painting.
Yeah.
You know, that there was this, you know, exploring my sexuality and, you know, leather and, you know, fucking. And at the same time there was this, you know, AIDS is present of, you know, this danger. And,
yeah.
And so I want to bring that into the painting. So, you know, somehow.
It's because it has this kind of, particularly I think with.
Yeah.
I remember we used to make these in school.
Right.
They were kind of Christmas decorations. We always used to make them.
So like celebratory, but also like parties over maybe.
Yeah.
You know, like it's after the party.
Yeah.
So
this is like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right. You know, so that's what I'm wanting to come forward in the painting.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I was even thinking at this point that I might make 2 leather cubes that this sits on. I'm you know, just playing with ideas of how it would be a finished piece. So it might be more of a sculptural piece rather than, you know, a painting.
Have you worked in this scale before? I mean,
I have. I you know, have some larger paintings over in the corner there, but I haven't worked this large for a while because the thing about working, you know, if it doesn't go to a museum collection,
what do you do?
Yeah, who's going to have a, you know, 113-inch painting in their house that they probably can't even get into their, you know, I couldn't get this into my house.
Yeah.
And
is this from the
fine art stretcher bars?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know, so luckily that fine art stretcher bar was right next door, so I walked over there. They made this.
Yeah.
Walked it back, and then I thought for the first 2 weeks of having this, like, what did I get myself into? Why did I do this again? Start a large painting that nobody's gonna buy. So, you know, but I just...
Somebody may buy it.
Right, and I just wanted this, I wanted to see what it would... I wanted to work with this idea. I have a smaller painting that's vertical, that's in a show that I have in New York at C24 Gallery, and it's called Pretending to See the Future, which is actually a song from OMD, Orchestral Maneuvers in Dark, this 80s band.
Yeah.
And so it's this green painting, and it has, it's kind of about this idea of like layers of veils. And so on the surface of it has these glitter pipe cleaners and string over the surface of it. And so that was kind of the starting point. I wanted to do another painting like that, but larger. And so that's what's happening with this. So I'm going to explore the surface, touching the surface with text and marring it, and then going another layer over that surface.
Yeah.
So like there'll be 3 different layers. You know, the background, this rainbow, you know, then the kind of scrawls and mark making on the surface, and then the layer over the surface.
The interesting thing with getting a canvas this big is that it's almost like you've gone so big that it allows you to actually start doing the experimentation.
Right.
It's almost like the opposite of a sketchbook. You know, people usually do in a sketchbook really small things that will then become larger, but it's almost like you've opened this up for yourself to then go.
Right.
I can see where I can go.
You know, so actually these, you know, these could have been seen as kind of sketches for this idea down here. You know, it's like, how far do I want to take this building up the surface? But you know, for me, it's important, these little, you know, kind of, you know, the mark making where it's like the leather has scraped this, or you know, the accidents that happen. So like this idea of weathering the canvas, like it starts having its own history, because as I'm making something, a piece of paint's flying off and falling down over there, or something's brushing up against it, and you know, transferring the paint over here.
In fact, it's actually getting more.
Right, and you know, I want this sense of, you know, this sense of gravity too.
Yeah.
You know, that's pulling down. So like the dripping is important to it, and you know. who knows if I'll make, you know, a line of studs all the way up the canvas. So I mean, you know, at a certain point, that what happens is I'm obsessed with the idea of seeing what the idea that I have that starts developing as I'm making it. I want to see it finished. So I become more and more obsessed with like finishing the painting, just to get it, you know. And at this point, I'm going to make another, you know, the wood up there and start adding the stuff on the top of this. Right now, this is kind of just put into place. But yeah, like I could see myself actually doing 3 more this size.
It's interesting seeing you talk about working on this as well, and thinking about that, what we were talking about earlier with the studio work being an important part of the thinking process, and you know that's really clear with this, with this particular work. Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, that I feel like that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this, you know, this is just at the starting point of this piece.
Yeah.
But there's a process I'm going through, like, oh, I don't want to fuck up the parts I like.
Yeah.
You know, and then that starts playing, you know, this idea. It's like, okay, Mark, you can't become fixated on something that, you know, might need to be painted out. You know, sort of. So right now I'm kind of fixated on keeping this the way it is. You know, trying to preserve that as I'm working on other parts of the painting. But, you know, it's all one thing, so it has to work together. So, which is why it's sometimes good for painters, for myself, to work on several pieces at one time.
Yeah.
So I can walk away like, oh, I feel like painting more, but I don't know what to do on this. I'm going to work on, you know, these other pieces over here.
Yeah. So all of these still in process of being worked on?
Right. Yeah, all the ones on the wall.
And I mean, this is one.
This is such an odd painting for me. Like, I don't even know where this came from.
Yeah.
Right. It's one of those paintings that started out as another idea. I mean, it's, you know, I've actually been, you know, moving things around. It's like, oh, what would this look like? You know, pinned to the front of it. So, but I think the painting, you know, it's a diptych, and you know, and like these pieces are, you know, I'm just working with ideas, you know. Anyway, so right now it's about this transition from light to dark, to life to death. That it's this kind of ephemeral thing. The things just kind of drift along, from lightness into darkness. That's just a very basic structure of the painting. And I like all this ephemera from the studio, that I thought, oh, this kind of represents who I am, like this kind of ephemera drifting along.
Yeah. And
eventually it goes into from light to dark.
And I think also because of the kind of painterly quality, and it's kind of geometric as well. Right. It seems from an art context point of view, it seems to be making those kind of, you know, references to abstraction, but then adding these things, I think, is kind of, it's almost infecting that sort of purity.
That purity, yeah. And see, and that's, you know, I like that punk rock aesthetic.
Yeah.
Is this, you know, taking something and kind of fucking it up.
Yeah.
You know, like I love Ellsworth Kelly's work, but I always want to, you know, I'm interested in the fingerprints, or like, oh, there's a hair of the brush stuck to the paint, or you know, the handling of it. Yeah. And it's like, what would an Ellsworth Kelly look like if it was dragged behind a truck, or, you know, mangled up, or
Donald Judd with a big dent in it, or something like
Donald Judd. Yeah, I mean, that's where I think that's interesting.
Yeah,
like something was moved around, and, you know, like the story of the Picasso where the guy put his elbow through it. I mean, that to me is interesting. The elbow going through the painting. You know,
and like I was thinking with Duchamp's large glass, how it's shattered. And, you know, he embraced that.
Right.
You know, that.
And that's what you think about of that piece.
Yeah.
You think about that kind of, you know, the brokenness, the shattered.
And that's what makes it an interesting work, really.
But yeah, so that's, you know, that's where, you know, so I'll keep around pieces of ephemera.
Yeah.
Like in a pile over on the other side of the studio, things that I've been trying to put into a painting for years.
Yeah.
There's like one collage piece that I collaged this image from a African mask that I collaged onto cardboard, and I've had it for years. That I've been trying to.
And you don't quite know.
Yeah, I'll stick it on one painting. It just won't feel right. Maybe that piece never. Maybe this piece of foil. I don't know why I've saved this.
Yeah.
But I just this it has some glitter and some spray paint on it. I've saved this for over a year now because I did a whole series of those silver glitter paintings.
Yeah.
And I want to use it on a painting, I had this pinned up here the other day. I took a photograph of it, and I decided it was just too much,
Yeah. This is really interesting too, I think, and has the word end?
Yeah, I mean, I did a whole series of paintings and hanging pieces with the word end.
Yeah.
I like that I just cut out all the letters, the end, and then it spelled Eden and need. Yeah.
And is this here now because it's still being worked on?
No, yeah, I just when I was making room for you to sit down, I moved stuff over to the side here. But I like that. I don't know if I would show it this way, but I like that it looks like a tombstone. Our paintings as tombstones. Then I start looking at those two paintings that they kind of look like tombstones also.
There is in Highgate Cemetery in London, which is where Karl Marx is buried, weirdly enough. But in Highgate Cemetery there is an artist that's buried there who has a tomb that spells out
that
similarly. No, it just says dead.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I like that. Very pure. But then the decaying body is the thing that's not pure.
Yeah, yeah. And it is a very it's a very hard edge kind of abstract looking object.
But I like looking at hard edge abstraction, and I like the formal, very formal, rigorous formal qualities to that work. But I also, for me, it's like I wanted to leave in,
I was just
the pencil marks, and
yeah.
When I started this, I was gonna do this all freehand. Then I started taping it off. I just, but I like that, some of it's not all measured out. It was a choice. I could have started this painting by making everything fit exactly, doing the triangles all the same size, but I just wanted to have it be more intuitive and see how they would fit in. But I had this idea of the split canvas, the triangles on one side, the light triangles and dark triangles.
And like you were saying before about seeing the work and seeing the studio practice in there, you definitely get that from
right.
You're showing your process.
Right. Yeah, there's a way I could start removing all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could make that choice to remove that from the painting, but I don't want to remove that.
Yeah.
To me, like the fingerprint is, just as important to the work.